3.5 million units sold in its first 4 days in North America. That shows you how successful a console can get. For what came out recently, I actually spent a week with just my Switch 2 alone and experienced some of the highs, some of the mediums, and some of the lows. And I'm going to go through all of them one step at a time. And also, I am going to see whether or not it's worth upgrading from your Switch 1 or V2 or OLED, whatever you have that's before this, and see if it's worth the upgrade. Also, a majority of these shots were actually from the hotel that I was staying in during my recent stay in Niagara Falls, so for some of the B-roll that you'll see, that's where a majority of the footage will be shot at. So for those wondering about the difference between the two locations, that's why. So to start things off with the upgrade for Tears of the Kingdom, I got to play a little bit of that, and I got to purchase the upgrade pack for that. I didn't do so for Breath of the Wild because I wanted to see how it compares and contrasts versus that game in particular at 30 frames per second. But from what I've heard from other Switch 1 games, it's a step up in terms of performance, obviously because of all the internals. And even after purchasing the upgrade pack to make it have 60 frames per second, it was definitely a smooth experience, and even getting to load games just like that, that's one thing I also liked. And also getting to play Super Mario Odyssey, which, given my experience playing it in handheld mode, since mainly I'm just a handheld user for the Switch, didn't really bother me regardless of the resolution and the frames per second. Even I can't tell the difference between 60 to 120, unfortunately, but it was pretty much the same as what you'd expect. Mario Kart World, I know, is on the subject of controversy regarding its price point, but me personally, since I'm mostly a physical collector, I decided to go physical for this game because game preservation reasons. The only argument I will say is I feel like it should have been at least $70, but it's still worth it if you're looking to play with others, whether it be friends or family. And that's one thing I actually enjoyed about Super Mario. That's what I enjoy about Mario Kart World. There's way too many Marios. Why? And even getting a chance to play with just one single Joy-Con on the Switch 2 versus on the OLED, also a much more comfortable experience playing it just with that configuration alone. And also the one thing everyone has gushed about, Cyberpunk 2077, which as of now, I'm currently on Act 2, but just seeing that game, which is 60 gigabytes in and of itself with the DLC included, being on a 64 gigabyte cartridge, and CD Projekt Red. Excuse me, I can't speak. The fact they were able to grab something as big as that and minimalize it at literally the palm of your hand and not make it too heavily reliant on graphics, that's also a great thing to see. Although there is one minor nitpick that I do have, at least from my eyes, is at least when some of the shadows, not every single shadow, but when the light reflects off of a character, you do get like some pixelated stuff on some of the shadows, but even if it's not like a beast of a console like the PS5 is, for example, or any PC with like the most advanced specs you could do to your PC, having all that is great. But for what they were able to do for the Switch 2 and minimalize it and still make it playable, it's definitely fantastic, even for just a mobile way or a portable way on playing the game on the go. The only two things I found meh, personally, would be how they utilize transferring the save data. And now, I'm not talking like system transfer from one console to another. I didn't do that, unfortunately, because even though it's been a long time since I've done a system transfer from one Switch to another regarding the OLED, I didn't do so for the Switch 2, so I just went in blind as much as possible. I only selected a handful of games that were already saved on the cloud from my NSO account, so I was pretty much stuck with using a virtual key card, and I was also afraid that if I did the system transfer, that it would wipe off all the save data on my Switch OLED. I can't confirm nor deny that. I didn't bother doing that, unfortunately, so that's one thing I missed out on. And I know people are fascinated by the mouse mode that's on the second Joy-Con. Now, me personally, I don't have any experience dealing with any kind of PC gaming, since I know those kinds of games are heavily relying on mouse controls. But from what I've heard, as long as they're horizontal like this, or vertical, or if they're like this, I don't even know directions either. Basically, if the Joy-Con is like this and you're dragging around, I heard those are great, but since I'm mainly a handheld user, unless if I'm doing a review or something, I don't see any purpose on using the mouse mode, even if it's just for a gimmick, personally. Not to say it's bad or anything, I just didn't find the time nor investment to do that. And now, even though I've already made a video talking about the game key card controversy regarding the Switch 2. I'm not going to bother purchasing any kind of game key card physically in person because there's no reason to do that. So as is, physical games only for this beast, regarding the Switch 2 library anyway. And another part that I do find to be pretty nitpicky, even though it's nice to see that we still have the screenshots saved and we can also record at least 30 seconds of footage. It would have been nice if they went for at least 1 minute, but one part of me is actually really wishing that it would have been at least capped at 60 frames per second maximum. Not 120, but it would have been nice to see that be implemented onto this as well. And of course, one thing that I know a lot of people have complained about, and even I've shared about this myself, the battery life. And yes, I did the recalibration settings of pushing the volume buttons simultaneously and the power button and getting a white screen and then powering it back on and recalibrated the battery. I was able to do that during my trip, even though it does improve it slightly. One thing I found is just dimming the Switch itself to at least 50% brightness. Just let me go down here. Yeah, I was able to do that. That's what I was able to do for a majority of the time, and also what you'll also see on the camera too, or on the B-roll. And one thing I will say about the Switch 2, like I've already mentioned, is just playing it in the handheld mode. I didn't bother playing it on a dock, at least not yet anyway. It's still a comfortable experience for someone who has big meaty claws like I do. And even just with adding the thumbs or the joystick caps that you can get at Best Buy, adding those onto there gives it a little bit more of a personality to the Switch 2 rather than just with the black caps or with the black joysticks. It actually makes the Kamen Rider Build Hazard aesthetic pop a little more, just like the actual suit. Only thing's missing is a build driver, and this will be complete. Even though it's already been a week since the console actually launched, one thing that actually did disappoint me regarding the library for the Switch 2 would be how lacking in personality it actually has. On one hand, it's nice for people to actually get to experience a part of the Switch 1 library for those that missed out on getting it on the OG Switch. But another part of me is like, they're just kind of ports, but also have some level of advancements depending on what kind of game you put in. And so I really didn't need a purpose to actually try and buy another copy of like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom or Mario Party Jamboree or any of those other games. Or even Kirby the Forgotten Land, which I still need to play. But one thing I will give the Switch 2 credit regarding the physical library. Luckily, the some of the games for the Switch 2 do have reversible art covers, so huzzah for that. But one thing I will give them credit for is them adding an actual colored spine, or art spine, rather than the colored one that you see on the Switch 1. That's one thing I actually do appreciate about the Switch 2 physical games. Another part of me is actually wishing for a little bit more first-party titles, like 50% first-party, 50% other stuff like third party. And I feel like that's what I kind of did. Fuck me. One thing I did notice regarding playing the Switch 2 in general, this is from personal experience, is normally whenever I'm pressing A and trying to simultaneously move the right analog stick, I do feel like a little bit of cramminess whenever I switch between the buttons as well, or between the buttons to the joystick itself. Like I said before, I appreciate the upgrade in the size. Don't get me wrong. I just kind of wish there was a bit more comfort into it. That's something I do kind of miss about regarding the Wii U, because for the gamepad alone, the joysticks were pretty much on top, and the buttons and the D-pad, respectively, were below. So it's one personal nitpick I do have, because I actually do like sliding my thumb side to side, rather than just like like that. But outside of that, it's perfect. As for the resolution on the screen, even though it's not an OLED, it's still fascination, or it's still fascinating with the LCD screen that you were able to get on the Switch 2. Let me turn down the settings on my OLED here. Yeah, even though it's not 100% perfect like the OLED screen-wise, this is still fascinating for what it can do. And now, in regards to whether or not it's worth upgrading. Much like every game console, no console is perfect, even if it's on launch day. And I know some people have dealt with small minor issues regarding their launch day console for the Switch 2. Luckily, I haven't had any experiences at the moment regarding any kind of weird trickery of sorts or any glitches or even just like battery packs that are just like out to here, just having a dump truck of an ass. I'm still fascinated with what the Switch 2 has to offer. I just don't like the battery pack. I know it's a dead horse that's already been beaten to death, but that's one thing that if Nintendo didn't implement trying to break the system, if you try and mod it, even if it's like doing a battery upgrade, that's the only one thing that I would change regarding the Switch 2 is a bigger battery. Not as big as the V2 per se, but just big enough to last at least 4 hours minimum. Maybe 3, but ideally 4. However, after some careful time and consideration regarding messing with the Switch 2 alone for 1 week and spending so much time with my OLED, I'm still going to keep my OLED because I already have a huge library of games, whether it be from first party, third party, or compilations. I have a multitude of games in that regard for the Switch, both physical and digital. For the Switch 2, I'm going to be more careful about what I download onto this if I do decide to download stuff, what I add to the physical library, and regarding which console I would like to bring. If you already have a Switch 1, even if it's just the OLED like here, if you don't have the money, I would still stick to your original Switch, even if you have a multitude of games in your library. I would keep your Switch in that regard. However, if you do have the money, and if you're looking for a little bit more advancements regarding graphics and technological stuff inside this thing, I'm sorry for not being a tech expert in this case. And if you have big hands like me, definitely go for this. However, even after messing with this in Niagara Falls, it actually does make me wish I was back in my hotel room just playing these games. We still gotta give credit where credit is due with its predecessor. Even with the sales with this console alone, at least the V1, those numbers don't lie. Maybe we'll see the Switch 2 get slightly higher as the months progress. I can't confirm nor deny that for myself. But as it is, I'm still happy with the purchase and even getting the opportunity to spend some of my birthday money on this and even using my own money as well and being fascinated with most of the results. But the only thing I need to do is find the proper skin for this. Maybe add the RX-72 on the left Joy-Con and Char's Zaku on the right. And maybe add some Gundam stuff on the back. I don't know, I'm just spitballing. I'll need to think of something. But that's pretty much all I got for my personal thoughts on the Switch 2 after messing with it for 1 week. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Jana. I just pulled out the Char.